Greetings, everyone. My name is London Bell, and I'm the president of the Macomb County branch of the NAACP. On behalf of our executive committee and members, I would like to welcome you to our virtual candidate forum for Macomb County Prosecutor. I'd like to take this time to thank our collaborators, the official Democratic Black Caucus of Macomb County, the Michigan Republican Assembly, and Agape Social Justice LLC. I'd like to thank the candidates in advance for their time this evening. And I'd also like to thank our Legal Redress Committee Chair and our branch treasurer, Ms. Julie Allward, for her leadership in organizing our virtual candidate forum for this evening. Our virtual forum is being recorded and being live streamed to our Facebook page this evening. A recording of our forum will be available tomorrow, and you can also visit our website at www.macombnaacp.org for information about the candidates for Macomb County Prosecutor and our moderator, Ms. Stephanie Kreider. During our forum this evening, we will not have live fact checkers. However, we will have fact checking available on our website and social media within the next day or so. So again, I'd like to thank the candidates in advance for their time this evening. And now I'd like to turn it over to our wonderful moderator, Stephanie Kreider, founder of Agape Social Justice LLC. Stephanie, over to you.
Thank you, London. Greetings, everyone. We welcome you, as London said, to the Macomb County Virtual Candidate Forum for Prosecuting Attorney. And with our candidates this evening, I want to start out by just thanking you again for being here. And prior to us starting, Mr. Lucido did ask that we call him Pete. And so, Christina, I just want to give you the same opportunity if it's okay to call you Christina.
Absolutely.
I will do that as well. We welcome you this evening to our audience who is watching on Zoom, as well as our audience on Facebook Live. We do have the option for you to use Q&A this evening. So for those of you who would like to submit questions, feel free to use the Q&A option. If you are not familiar with why this Zoom looks this way, it's because we're in webinar mode. And so with webinar mode, the features are slightly different. But if you have a question, our team will view those in Q&A. Before we begin, I would like to remind you all of some of the ground rules that you did receive from us prior to today's evening. We want to make sure that we ensure that we have a fair and respectful candidate forum. So candidates are expected to conduct themselves respectfully. That means no disruptions or personal attacks of any kind. Each candidate will have an equal opportunity to speak and respectfully respond to opponents' remarks, so there's no need to interrupt. Candidates should focus on the issues relevant to the role of the Macomb County Prosecuting Attorney. Off-topic comments are strongly discouraged. As a community advocate, I highly recommend we stay focused on our community so that we can be respectful of what their values are and what their interests are. There will be 2 rounds of questions. Candidates will have a specific time throughout the forum, and the time limits are as follows. You'll have 2 minutes each for your opening statement, no rebuttal for the opening statement. There will be 2 minutes for responses to questions. You'll have 1 minute available for rebuttal if that's desired, 1 rebuttal per question, and you'll have 2 minutes for closing remarks. There is no rebuttal for closing remarks. Do you both agree to those terms?
Sure.
Yeah,
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have with us Christy King. She will be going off camera shortly. We want to let you know she is going to be our timekeeper for this evening. And so what you will see when you have 30 seconds remaining to wrap up your statement, Christy will show you this sign that says 30 seconds remaining.
When I may your have time to stay on camera. So,
yes. And when your time is up, Christy will show a sign that lets you know that your time is up. We kindly ask you at that moment, please stop. We will let you know if you've gone beyond time. As been stated, the audience can go to the Macomb County NAACP website and view information regarding fact checking. They can also review the recording and other information that will be shared there. So let's get started with our opening statements. This evening, we are going to start with candidate Lucido. So Pete, I turn it over to you for your 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Pete Lucido. I'm the Macomb County Prosecutor. I've been homegrown in Macomb. There's 8 Lucido children that were born in my family, 4 boys and 4 girls. Mom and dad make 10. 4 of the children were born in Detroit. I was the 6th child of the 8, born in St. Clair Shores. So I've lived all my life in this county. I went to school in this county. I went to Macomb Community College. I went on to Oakland University. And afterwards, I got a master's degree in business. And I also went ahead and went to law school at night at the Detroit College of Law. During that period of time, I had been a probation officer. I've been a parole officer, a public defender in the 36th District Court and Frank Murphy Hall of Justice. My first law office was opened up on 8 Mile and Gratiot in the city of East Detroit, then now known as East Point. I did criminal defense, and I also did a garden varieties of what's called civil law. Under the criminal defense, it was a natural for me because of the fact that I was a probation officer and parole officer. I did a general practice and founded one of the largest independent Macomb County law firms and hired 8 lawyers as well as 14 support staff. After almost 30 years of practice, when my brother died, I became a lawmaker. I went to Lansing to do a job, not get a job, because I had the best job that I've been practicing for almost 30 years. I went up there in the legislature, in the House and in the Senate. I passed a host of legislation dealing with criminal justice reforms because I've about had enough of seeing the unjust and injustices done for those that were economically challenged. I went ahead and also had been sitting on the Law Revision Commission to change the laws that didn't work for people. I also realized that there needed to be the Michigan Indigent Defense Council Fund so that those that did not have assets or resources had the ability to defend themselves properly and under the law that those that had resources. So you couldn't get certain things like a...
Thank you. Thank you, Pete. Your time is up.
You're welcome.
And Christina, your 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Hines. I'm also running for Macomb County Prosecutor. I am a professional prosecutor. I have spent my entire career fighting for victims of sexual assault and child abuse. Started my career at the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, where I handled pretty much every type of case from homicide, sexual assault, torture, kidnapping, child abuse, and many more. I've practiced from district courts all the way up to the Michigan Supreme Court. This is what I do. I am a prosecutor, but I am also a wife and a mom. I have a wonderful family, and they're a big part of why I'm running. So they're actually here. I told them that they could say hi tonight before they went to bed. This is my 6-year-old, my 8-year-old, my almost 4-year-old, and my husband, David. He's not 4 yet, but thank you guys. Go to bed. And my husband is a project manager at the GM Tech Center. And they're a big reason why I'm running, because every single day I look around and I see that our children these days are not able to have the same type of freedom in this country and the same safety in this community that I had growing up. And they deserve that, and they deserve more. So I know that a prosecutor's #1 job is to keep people safe. And over the last few years, I've been looking in this community and I see ways that I could help make it safe with my experience, with the integrity that I could bring to the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. So I know how to do this job. This is what I do. And I'm really excited to bring my experience and to bring this integrity to the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office to make this place safe for all of us and to make sure that future generations want to not only grow up, but also raise their families here.
Thank you to both of the candidates for those opening statements. So we're going to get started with round one. Round one has 3 questions, and these questions have been directed to both of you. from 3 organizations. Those are the organizations who coordinated this evening's forum. The first question will actually be from the Macomb County Branch NAACP. And Pete, we're going to start with you for this question. In addition to incorporating the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, what measures should be taken to ensure prosecutors and staff in the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office serve the community through a culturally competent lens? And for this question, we want you to specifically think about the social and economic status of Macomb County residents, people with disabilities and developmental challenges, people of color, and other unique lived experiences of residents.
So I think what you need to know is that the law should be treating people equally, fairly, and just. And the prosecutor's role is a minister of justice. In this case here, those that are economically challenged now, because of my initiatives in the legislature under the MIDC, have the resources to hire experts as well as people to go ahead and investigate the cases. And they should expect these outcomes to be similarly and situated for everyone, not just some of the people. You run the office in a constitutional sense so that everybody gets fair justice under the law. These outcomes have to be consistent. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter the community, who you are, or whether or not you have resources or not. Because if not, it's a disparity of how we administer justice here in Macomb. And as a former criminal defense lawyer, I saw the injustices that the prosecutors have done, and I pledged to go forward to changing that. It's a unique situation for the taxpayers to have somebody who knows how the other side not only had lived, but also now has a change in those circumstances because of the resources needed. So disparity of giving justice is not what I'm about. It's about fundamental fairness and due process. And they should be consistent regardless of who you are, the color of your skin, or the makeup of your ethnicity, as well as your religion, your culture. It doesn't matter. It's who you are that you get a fair, just shake in the criminal justice system. They should be consistent. And I'm going to continue to say that because without consistency, nobody can believe in a just system. So I'm proud of the fact that what I brought is resources into the prosecutor's office so we too can punish those for hate crimes, those that are wrongfully in prison, and have a just system. We had done these things because we knew that there was an injustice when I went to Lansing and
Thank you.
Came home.
Thank you. And Christina, same question for you. Would you like me to repeat it?
Sure, I would take you up on that. Thank you.
Okay. In addition to incorporating the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, what measures should be taken to ensure prosecutors and their staff in the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office serve the community through a culturally competent lens, specifically thinking about social and economic status, people with disabilities and developmental challenges, people of color, and other unique lived experiences of residents in Macomb County?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would say that we do need to actually engage in ensuring that our prosecutors are handling every single case with best practices in mind, and that our prosecutors are actually thinking about the victims and the people that we are serving, right? So everybody comes into this criminal legal system with different life experiences. You mentioned folks with disabilities. We know that people with disabilities, they are impacted and they access our criminal legal system in a very different way. And they do often need additional services in order to be able to fully participate in our system. And so every single prosecutor needs to try to understand that and needs to really be engaged with our community in order to understand how their lived experiences may impact their ability to make it through these court systems, whether they're a victim of a crime or a defendant. The first job of a prosecutor is always to keep people safe. But when we have experienced prosecutors who want to stay in our offices, who are trained in best practices and who are committed to really serving the community, and we can also at some point, I'm sure, talk about community prosecution as well. But when we have those prosecutors who are adequately trained, they will be able to serve the community in a fair and just way. It requires good leadership from the top.
Thank you. I appreciate your response as well. And our second question is coming from the Michigan Republican Assembly. We will start with you first, Christina, for this question. There are cases nationwide where criminals were given a lenient sentence and given the opportunity to commit more crimes in their communities. How do you reconcile the actions of prosecutorial discretion to circumvent laws you disagree with, while also considering a prosecutor's duty to ensure equal protection under the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution?
So the first job of a prosecutor is to keep people safe. And for the last 10 years, I've been handling some of the toughest sexual assault and child abuse and violent crime in the state. I have held offenders accountable on some extremely serious violent crime, from, armed robbery, torture cases. I've had cases with people taking women around and sexually assaulting them at gunpoint. I've handled extremely serious cases. And I know firsthand that when we have serious violent offenders, we need to hold them accountable and we need to send them to prison. That is a big part of being a prosecutor, and that's a big part of keeping our community safe. When we have non-serious or low-level offenses, what we would call them, we can engage in other crime prevention methods so that people are not going out and reoffending. That's another really important part of this job, right? Is being able to identify all of those cases based on the facts and make sure that we are actually treating every single case individually. But again, for prosecutors, when it comes to serious violent offenses, which is what my background is in, we need to hold people accountable and protect our communities.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Pete, the same question for you.
I think everyone has a right. I think everyone has a right to justice, and that justice has to be through the lens of those that are looking in and seeing that there is fundamental fairness. I think that the prosecutors need to be educated and trained. That training is very important because of the uniqueness of what laws that are out there. But we don't make laws. We don't send lawmakers to Lansing. And as a former lawmaker, I went to Lansing to go make the laws that were going to be right and just for the individuals back home. Those laws are voted on by the people of the legislature and signed into law by the governor. If you're not going to enforce the laws fairly, justly, and evenly, then why send lawmakers to Lansing? We spend a lot of money on what's called policy in Lansing. When they come home, they would expect to see those results of their fruits of their labors in Lansing. So to go ahead and train prosecutors to look at the new laws that are coming out of Lansing, like we've had the clean slate legislation when I was there that I implemented and also saw it through when I was in the Senate, as well as the MIDC bringing the resources back for individuals that were affected by the law, the low economic status, and those individuals that had less than a family, like we see traditionally and historically. Those laws need to be implemented because we saw that there was an injustice. I believe that there is a system that you can follow the law, have order, and also at the same time, if you don't like the law, tell your lawmakers to repeal it. That's what our system has always been. It should never change. Those individuals that want to go pick and choose laws or pick and choose how they prosecute, that's an injustice to everybody because we'll never understand what it is and who's going to get charged. So if we charge with the law and then have those things that we have like specialty courts, as well as those units that I implemented, hate crimes, those are important right now in this era that we go ahead and see that fundamental fairness is done.
Thank you. Thank you both for your responses. And our last question from one of our organizers is coming from the Democratic Black Caucus of Macomb County. Pete, will ask this question to you first. Can you explain the process and criteria the prosecutor's office should follow when evaluating whether the use of deadly force by law enforcement officers was justified, particularly in cases where there is no immediate threat posed by the individual who was shot and murdered by police?
There's no justification for any threat to an individual when you're not threatened. Number two, that there is law that's put in there in a duty to intervene. Law office individuals go out to a scene, they have a duty to intervene. If there's not deadly force that you are reckoned with, which means you're confronted with, you have no right to give deadly force. And therefore, those officers that do the same will be held accountable just as anyone else. Remember, everybody, there's MCOL standards. Those are the standards held within policing agencies that they go to school for training. And as a former lawmaker, again, I put the bill in for duty to intervene. No one has a right to go ahead and beat the heck out of somebody when another officer is idly watching, and therefore you're going to be held just as accountable. We've charged more officers in my administration in the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office for those acts. But PACPAM, that is our association that we live under, all the prosecutors here in this state, has a conflict system. And that conflict happens when we have an officer who is working outside of color, which means outside of his authority, and hurts somebody. If it's going to affect 38 to 50 victims that I have with that officer, I have to refer it out because it is a conflict. And also the Attorney General, as well as the U.S. Attorney, Dawn Isom, has a right to take those files from us when they believe that there's a civil rights violation. As such, we will go ahead and cooperate with those agencies. But I will not sacrifice officers' injustice to somebody. I'll make sure that they get prosecuted under law fairly and indicate to the individuals that they'll have their day to talk about this in court.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just so you know, there's a question coming up later where you'll have an opportunity to talk about that a little bit more.
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. And Christina, same question for you.
I will swiftly, thoroughly, and transparently investigate any case that involves the use of force against a civilian or police brutality, and I will make all of those findings publicly available. I will not cover any of those stories up or lie about them.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we're going to go to round two. These are our audience questions. There were questions that were submitted in advance when people registered for tonight's event. There was also an online questionnaire that was circulated. We received questions that way as well. And then this evening, we've had a surge of registrations and more questions that have come in. And so our team is sorting through those, and we'll get through as many questions as we can this evening. Our first audience question is, what would you describe as the most pressing needs for the Macomb County Prosecutor? Christina, we'll start with you for this one.
Well, the way I interpret that question is really about, what types of criminal activity do we need to focus on? And again, I know I've said it, but the prosecutor's job is to keep people safe. So we have to make sure that all of that serious violent crime is going to be handled by experienced prosecutors who know what they're doing. I've spent my entire career handling those cases, and I know how to do those cases personally. And I'm looking forward to working with the APAs in Macomb County to make sure that we are handling our business on all of those cases. But beyond our serious violent crime, we also have a lot of crime that's been evolving over the past several years. And one of the areas of law that I'm very passionate about preventing is child online enticement and sextortion. For the last 3 years, I was working with the Michigan State Police, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, local law enforcement, and school administrators on developing programming to help keep kids safe online. This is an area where predators are coming online to attack our kids, to have them send photos of themselves, and to potentially meet with our children. And they're coming into our homes to do this right on our children's mobile and laptop devices. And so it's something that I think that we really have a lot of power in preventing, but it involves the community coming together. One of the things that I'm really proud of is my ability to work well with others, right? To get along with all of the stakeholders in our community, to work with judges, law enforcement, the county executive, to work with these people and move our community forward so that we can all be safe here and especially so that we can protect our kids.
Thank you. And same question for you, Pete. What would you describe as the most pressing needs for the Macomb County Prosecutor?
100% resources. Without resources, you can't advance the prosecution and or you can't advance those individuals who are in those jobs every day working for the people. So I say this, when you have the resources, you can utilize the specialty courts such as the job court, substance abuse court, drug court, mental health court, and the veterans court. In addition, we have community outreach. I have been a champion of community outreach as it relates to hate crimes, going into the community every day, every week, every month to tell the community, we have a hate crime unit. This is what we do. This is how we do it. In addition, we tell them about our specialty courts and how it is that we can make an effectuate, example of success, because it does have a success rate instead of incarceration. Training. It's critical that the police are trained as to these new and advancements that have happened, not only technologically because of the body cams, but also in the areas of these type of crimes, such as hate crimes, with the expansion of the Elliott-Larson's Act. Hate crimes are very serious right now in a community of such diversity in Macomb County, when you have a melting pot of everything, ethnicity, origin, color, you name it, it's there. Prosecuting cases, there's a difference now of how to prosecute cases in today's society as it was when I first started. And then training law enforcement how it is that they're supposed to do their job, as well as, because of body cam and all the digital evidence, you have to cope with that. So you have to have the resources to go ahead and have that. You could have 5 officers at a scene and you have to review all the body cams. Last is educate the community. Send out messages to the community, get there, get a hotline, get a website, and being able to go ahead and communicate with the community as to how you do it and why you do it and what is it that we need to also do that we've missed. So I think those things are critical to focus in and do the right thing every day, every day, every day.
Thank you. And in terms of you talking about getting information to the community and receiving that information, that actually ties into our next question. The question is, how do you plan to engage with the community and incorporate their feedback into your policies and practices? We'll start with you, Pete, for that.
Great. I would call on the NAACP right now, today, as we're sitting here, and your organization to provide me candidates, first of all, that are skilled, that they can go ahead and make application in my office. I reached out to the Ministerial Alliance in Macomb County, asking them, if you want people of color, if you want to go ahead and have a diverse prosecutor's office, you need to help me from the pulpit and get those individuals to be candidates to go ahead and get those jobs, because we do need the diversity in the prosecutor's office. And quite frankly, we've done it. We've accomplished that by the hires that I've had. I've hired over 22 individuals in the prosecutor's office, and those are the units themselves, 22 diverse units, of which, and I'm looking at my statistics right now, of which out of that, 14 of them are females, and of which 4 of them are individuals of color that go ahead and run those units. So you have to put them in leadership roles so that there's an outcome that's determinative for those in the community that see this. In addition, I implore that you participate the NAACP to go ahead and get the candidates to staff my office, as well as participate in my internship programs, which I started. That's a learning experience for the individuals that see whether or not they want to have these jobs and whether or not they want to be attorneys to help those individuals prosecute crimes. So I'm looking at and I'm looking forward to the engagement by the NAACP of Macomb County to go ahead and provide me that pathway that's necessary here in the county.
Thank you. And Christina, how do you plan to engage with the community and incorporate their feedback into policies and practices?
I think that's a great question. You know, our community plays the most important role in our criminal legal system, because when we're talking about public safety, our safety comes from our communities. When we have tight-knit and strong communities, we have lower crime rates. And so I think that a prosecutor's job is to always engage with community members, and that we are better when we're hearing directly from community members and organizations about what are the struggles, what are the dangerous areas, what are some of the areas that you think that we need to be more engaged in. And so if we have that regular feedback from our community members and from organizations, then our prosecutor's office will be better, and our law enforcement and prosecutors are going to be able to hold people accountable and make our communities safer. So that's a top priority for me. And frankly, I have a proven track record of it. When I was in Wayne County and Washtenaw County, when I was the chief of the Special Victims Unit and Appeals over in Washtenaw County, I helped start diversion programs there, diversion court programs. And we did community listening tours. We really engaged with the community to make sure that this was something that the community wanted. It's not just the prosecutor dictating policies from on high. It's the prosecutor engaging with the community, making sure that they know what will be helpful to community members, and then working towards the goals with our community members to make our communities safer and stronger for everyone.
Thank you. So for this next portion, we actually have two questions that are directed at each of you. So I'm going to actually start out with you, Christina. There is a question asking if you have ever experienced an ethical dilemma and how you may have resolved that.
Yeah. Actually, I have one big case that I will never forget. It was when I was in Washtenaw County. I was the chief of the Special Victims Unit there. And one of my colleagues had charged a case that any experienced sexual assault prosecutor would have charged, where a victim alleged being kidnapped, tortured, and sexually assaulted. The victim did seem very credible, and that case was charged. My colleague then went out on leave, and the police ended up informing me that they had concerns about the veracity and credibility of the statement. So we did a very deep dive into all of the evidence. We tried to follow every line of corroboration. We specifically looked for any type of, even the smallest amount of corroboration of the survivor's story, and we were not able to find it, and in fact found evidence that went towards exonerating that defendant. And so we had to make the very hard decision of dismissing that case. And as you can probably imagine, this was 2022, I believe, there's a lot of media attention, right, over these cases. And the victim on that case was a Black woman, and historically, Black women have not been believed when they have reported sexual assault. And so we had to be very intentional and, again, community oriented when we dismissed that case and then released information about it. This job as a prosecutor, as I'm sure you can imagine, is very difficult. You sit there, you talk to survivors of crime, you talk to the spouse of someone who lost their loved one in a drunk driving. I spent hours watching child pornography cases. This job is difficult, but it is so rewarding. And one of the best things about it is when you do the right thing, even in hard circumstances, when you do the right thing, you feel all of the purpose in the world. And that's why this job is a dream job.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate both of your answers, and I appreciate both of you sticking to our ground rules this evening. It's great. All right. So our next audience question is directly for you, Pete. Why does your office feel there is a conflict of interest in making a prosecuting decision on the charges facing the Sterling Heights Police Department?
That's too easy. The reason why is simple. If you have an officer or officers that are on the job every day and they're bringing us victims and signing warrants as we do, and you have 38 to 56, as I've said earlier, of those victims that are going to have their cases prejudiced, you have to look at the overall totality. And in this case here in the Sterling Heights matter, it was very easy for me to look at this. MCOLS has a certain policy and protocol of what is force or deadly force. In addition, it would take somebody who's an expert in policing, not a prosecutor, to look to see if there was zealous overforce in a case. That was sent to the Macomb County Sheriff's Department for an investigation and determination whether there should be charges against officers. I didn't make the rules. Those are the rules that they play by. If they don't want to go there, they go to the state police. That's how all law enforcement agencies do it. In addition, at this time, we learned of all these victims that we had with these officers. So I had to make sure that I not only take into consideration the rights of the victim in the law enforcement where that case is, but also all the other victims that these officers were involved with. As such, I took to PAMPAC, which is the association, and they indicated that they want to take this from me and spin it to the Attorney General who took the case. That case will be prosecuted by the Attorney General's office, not by my office, because I don't want to harm, interfere, or disrupt those victims that we have to now take and make sure that their justice is preserved. I hope that helps. There's no other way to do it, just like Dawn Isom did with the case in Warren, where the officer that was in lockup slammed the guy to the ground. She said, I would like Prosecutor Lucido, that case. You defer to the authority.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the follow-up to that.
You got it.
All right. So we will move on to our next question. Christina, this one will be for you as well as for Pete. How will you advocate for women's rights and injustice to women in this role?
That's what I've been doing both personally and professionally. I feel like for my entire life. The reason that I became a prosecutor in the first place was because by the time I went to U of M, I had already known about a dozen women who had been sexually assaulted. And so I knew that I wanted to be in a space where I could advocate for women and for children. I went to Wayne State University Law School. I was on the leadership of the Women's Caucus there. I went straight into the Wayne County Prosecutor's office, and I wanted to be a sexual assault prosecutor. I have genuinely spent my entire career trying to fight for women's rights, and I've handled just hundreds of cases of sexual assault, of child abuse, domestic violence, of intimate partner homicide. I've worked on sexual assault review teams. I have worked with multiple shelters in the area. This is what I do. And I think that what really sets me apart is that not only have I spent my career doing this, but I don't want to just prosecute these cases. I want to end violence against women. I want that to be part of my legacy. And I will never stop fighting for women's rights, women's equality, and our ability to live safely in our communities.
Thank you. And just as a reminder to both of you, after the questions, each of you has an opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal if you choose to do so. Okay, Pete, same question for you. How
Sure.
will you advocate for women's rights and injustice to women in this role?
I've already have. And if you look at the statistical data, that is, I took office 3.5 years ago as the Macomb County Prosecutor. I have a total of 22 units, of which 14 of those units are chiefs. These are women that have strong backbone, good moral compasses, as well as a safe and knowledgeable direction of the law. They work hard. They should be applauded because they are champions. In addition, putting women and people of color and minorities into these leadership positions, you have then the ability to have them advocate. And that's what you need. You can't wait around and think that just because you can say something. Mine has been put into action already. These issues and these numbers cannot be hidden. They are revealed now. These issues such as child support, domestic violence, and hate crimes. These issues such as the Conviction Integrity Unit, which we freed an individual that would be our champion, Gail Pamikoff. She took a black male who had gotten a sentence of 25 years for armed robbery and got him out after 7.5 years because it was a wrongful conviction. So you do the right thing at the right time when you are there, not talk about it, do it. And that's what we did in the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. We're one of three offices that have the hate crimes here in the southwest portion of Michigan, one of 16, and all these are grant funded. We received over $4.5 million of grants under my leadership and role for cases such as DNA for exonerations, as well as hate crimes, as well as what's called the child support, the cooperative reimbursement. We're going after individuals that don't pay their child support, which is on the backs of the taxpayers, to do the right thing. And after $5,000, it's a felony. So the women that are in these units, the women that are advocating for these individuals are important.
Thank you, Pete. I'm going to
I
ask
would
a
like to
follow-up
take a
question.
rebuttal if that's
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
I think all I would want to mention is that when our elected officials are accused of sexual harassment and sexual assault, it sends a clear and direct message to survivors, and that is that they are not going to be believed. My personal experience as a sexual assault and domestic violence prosecutor and the data and studies support that conclusion. And I will be a prosecutor that people can trust and who has integrity and who has never been accused of sexual assault or harassment.
I'd like to follow up with that.
Yes.
Thank you. One that's accused is not necessarily guilty of a crime. And I take issue with the fact that people get accused every day that may be wrongfully accused. And as such, I think it's equally important that we get due process, fundamental fairness, and that's what a prosecutor does, justice. In this case here, one that's accused should never be condemned, but let them state their case openly in a court of law. And as such, it's important that we give everybody fundamental fairness.
Thank you. I'm actually going to ask a follow-up question to that. We had one of our audience members send in a question that's related to this. And I know both of you spoke to what you would do to be an advocate for women in the community. But thinking in terms of the workplace, how would you handle incidents of sexual harassment under your watch?
Who's starting this one?
This one is regarding sexual harassment in the workplace. So can you explain how you would handle those incidents of sexual harassment that occur in the workplace?
Yes, and I just wanted to clarify, did you want me to start the answer?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Honestly, every single case of sexual harassment that's alleged should go through the HR chain of command. When I was in Washington, actually in both of the counties that I worked in, I was a union member. I was the president of the First Assistance Union over in Washtenaw County. And I know how important it is that we take every single allegation very seriously and we fully investigate it. I'm aware that there have been multiple allegations in the last couple of years of sexual harassment in the workplace, and that recommendations were made for training that never happened. And I think that when I'm prosecutor, one of the things that I would want to do within the first 90 days is to make sure that, first of all, everyone feels safe and feels comfortable coming to work as exactly who they are so that they can do the best job that they can do. Because I know a lot of the folks at the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. A lot of those folks are just like me. They love their job. They love doing this work, and they just want to be able to go to work and do their job without fear of harassment or retaliation. So one of the things I would want to do is just make sure that people feel comfortable coming in day to day and know that they're going to be treated with respect and dignity. And if there are allegations made, then we would do a full investigation and make sure that everyone feels comfortable and everyone is satisfied with the outcome of that investigation.
And Pete, 2 minutes for you to respond to the same question regarding sexual harassment.
I agree. I don't think you just make accusations. You have to go ahead and make sure that those are validly proven. And in regards to an individual, that shouldn't be taken lightly. It should be taken up by the Human Resource Department. And those individuals that make those comments have to follow the law as it relates to the HR, making sure the individuals that are the alleged the ones that are accused have their due process and be given an opportunity, but also that they get notice of this. And that's a problem always in all these cases, that sometimes they don't even get notice of what the allegations are. So I think it's also equally important, after my 36 years as a practicing attorney, to do justice. And that justice is to make sure that you're given an opportunity of what those allegations are, who's making those allegations, vetting out those indications, making sure that both parties have a right to be heard, because sometimes what may appear to be one thing is not. So I appreciate the fact that you're willing to cooperate with an open forum and dialogue on those kind of issues. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate both of your responses. And similar question came up as well, but for this question, it's asking how can the public be ensured that fair and equitable treatment of people of color will occur under your watch in Macomb County? And we'll start this question with you, Pete.
Well, number one, I don't think that there is any allegations that I haven't treated anybody fundamentally fair. I think that would have got out there already in the last 3.5 years that I've had led the prosecutor's office. You'd probably hear it also from other prosecutors that they would have made sure that they were heard also, because they have a duty to go ahead and report those individuals or incidences where there wasn't justice. You know, we live by what's called disciplinary rules and ethics rules. Those rules are equally important to all of us that share those same responsibilities. And I can assure you that every case is treated fairly. I've put my chief of warrants is J.P. Hunt, former Gainesboro, Florida police officer, also 20 years with the Macomb County Prosecutor. He's an individual of color, and he is the one that's watching every warrant that is signed in the Macomb County Prosecutor's office. In our juvenile unit, Miss Tanya Clausen, now Tanya Getz, that's when I knew her over 20 years ago. She has 20 years experience. She's also an individual of color, and guess what? She's leading and championing the juveniles that are charged in Macomb County. So you want to talk about fundamental fairness? You want to make sure the lens or the optics or the eyes of those that are people of color are also in those positions of charging.
Thank you. And same question for you, Christina. What are your plans to ensure fair and equitable treatment for people of color under your watch?
So a prosecutor is supposed to represent everyone in the state of Michigan. Prosecutors have to uphold the law, and we have to keep people safe. That is a top priority. When you look at how our prosecutor's office is made up, I do agree with Pete here that it's important who you hire, and it's important that we have diversity and inclusion in who we hire. But I also really believe that it's important that prosecutors' offices are transparent in the charges that we make, in the recommendations for pleas that we make, and in the sentencing recommendations that we make. And so one thing that I am personally committed on is working on a racial disparities study in the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office, and then engaging with a complete transparency plan so that the community can see what it is that we are doing, that the community can see that we are treating every individual fairly and with justice, geared towards every individual case, that we're looking at the facts and circumstances, and that we're not using race or other instances of bias in our decision-making process. I am committed to making sure that that information is out and available for the public. It's something that we have not had in this county, and it is something that both conservative and liberal prosecutors across the country are starting to engage in, because it is a best practice and it helps bring the trust back into the community. Like I've mentioned before, when our community members don't trust us and don't believe that our institutions are being led with integrity, they start to doubt whether or not we are fair and just, and that's a really big problem. So I am personally committed to making sure that we have real and true integrity in Macomb County.
I'd like to rebut.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. When I was in the legislature, I was a part of the case study for judges in the state of Michigan of why people of color were getting more time than people of non-color. I asked the judges, are you even aware of this? And they weren't. I also did the study based upon the similar crimes, similar past and backgrounds of the individuals that were charged, and the kind of crimes that they were not only charged with, but also their prior past history. And the issue came about with the judges that were sitting on the bench, and they were primarily non-minority. And as such, some of the judges that were minority weren't even sensitive to the issue. So I think some of these studies that have to be done, including the one that would give the judges the opportunity to learn, why is it that you feel that people of color need more time than people of non-color? Again, our justice system isn't perfect, and it took a lot of work to get $148 million from the MIDC put into the defense bar, but it's necessary after all the injustices that have taken place. So it doesn't just lie in the hands of the prosecutor, it lies in the hands of the judges that are handing down these sentences.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to ask a follow-up question and make an attempt to combine a couple of questions coming from our audience. There are members of the community who feel that there are too many cases that end with a plea, and they're wanting to know what your thoughts are in terms of plea policies. But then there's also a question talking about people who are in jail, in prison, because of mental health issues, substance use issues. And so can you address some of those concerns that we often hear about those individuals who are in jail because they were maybe convinced to plea, and they may have other issues that may not warrant for them to actually be in jail? How would you address that, Pete? I'll start with you again first.
Thanks. I appreciate that question. You know, I've been a member, a board member of Families Against Narcotics for years, and Linda Davis is a champion, starting it with right down the street from my law firm in Clinton Township. And while, you know, we all do as prosecutors' offices plea bargains to meet the ends of justice, because trying every case is an injustice. You have reasons and causes why certain of the victims do not want to go to court, do not want to go to trial. And you try to go ahead and make sure the system is equally fair too, because you have to balance what the victim wants, what the officers want in accord with what it is that you're going to meet the ends of justice. So I know that there's plea bargains out there, but don't take it out on the prosecutor. Take it out on just the way the system is overloaded and burdened. We can't try every case till its end. Some people think that, but it doesn't work. Our office also goes on the strict rules of procedure on violent crimes and gun crimes. Mental health. We all said that this was the cause of mental health. We have a policy in my office, and it was my policy that I implemented. It's the first and only in the state to do a screening and assessment that anybody was found with a gun or in the commission of a crime with a gun. Is it mental health, or is it a felon getting out of prison that goes and picks up another gun because that's just a way of life? So we're tracking that right now. In addition, we do have those mental health courts up and running. I have them serviced for those judges that want to take on that challenge of the mental health. But we also have these deviations. We're very transparent, and we put it through on a computer system so that we can tell anybody anytime who asked for the deviation, what it was, and why it was that. One more thing. The lens of justice isn't looked at just by my eyes or one of my prosecutors. It's looked at in the eyes of the victim. It says, this is justice and this is what it looks like to me. That victim has a right to be heard, and most importantly, has a right to their justice.
Thank you. Christina?
Again, the number one job of a prosecutor is to keep people safe. And that means that we have to hold serious violent offenders accountable. For far too long in the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office, that hasn't been happening. And we do see that with the number of pleas. And some of those those statistics are publicly available. There were only 68 trials, including misdemeanors and felonies, in the entire year of 2023, which is less than the number of prosecutors that the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office has. So there is an extreme number of pleas happening in this county, and that is a problem because it doesn't lead to justice. When you have plea offers that are too lenient, which is the responsibility of a prosecutor, when you have pleas that are too lenient, two things happen. First of all, the serious offenders that need to be held accountable are not being held accountable. And number two, potentially innocent people, or like you mentioned, folks with mental health issues or substance use issues that could use other help, are not going to get the help that they need. And potentially innocent people could be led to plead guilty just because they don't want to keep sitting in jail forever. So we do have a lot of, like Pete said, issues with the system, but we also have issues within our prosecutor's office that we need to fix. We need to hold offenders, serious offenders, accountable, and that hasn't been happening. Now, on the mental health side of things, we have a mental health crisis in this country. We have a lot of different groups of people with serious mental health issues. Our young people are facing unprecedented mental health issues with the highest rate of suicide in the last several decades. We have serious schizophrenia and bipolar at all-time highs after the pandemic. And then we have this opioid crisis that is making a lot of our mental health issues even worse. And so there's things that we can do as a prosecutor's office to kind of come together on that, but a lot of it is working across the board with other stakeholders, not bickering, not fighting, working together and moving forward. Thank you.
Rebuttal, please.
Yes.
Thank you. I've learned in life, as my mother always said, that you have to first show accountability before you get redemption. That would be chapter 31, verses 8 and 9 of Proverbs. Unfortunately, every day I look at the victim and I ask the victim and I ask their families when it is a violent charge crime or gun crime, what does justice look like to you? How do you want that justice to be delivered? And because of the pandemic, we were closed and the courts were closed, especially Wayne County, where Christina came from. They were closed for 3 years, 4 years, and some of them are still just coming out of it. The victims at that point already began the healing process. And in my time as a prosecutor, I looked at what serves the justice and what serves the victim and the officers agreeable, because we all have to work together in a very succinct way. It's important that we all have those fundamental values of keeping not only the community safe, but also delivering justice as a victim feels that they have been served. And as such,
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I don't know if you all have looked at the time, but the hour has quickly passed by. And we have several other questions, great questions that can be posed to you. So I hope that our organizers will be able to get those questions to you, and perhaps you can work with them to get answers to these on the website as well. We are nearing the end of our 1 hour forum, and so I do want to make sure that we have time to give you closing statements. Each of you, as I mentioned before, will have 2 minutes for your closing statement. There will not be a rebuttal for this portion. And so I will, Pete, give you the floor to give your 2 minutes, and then Christina, you can give your 2 minutes as well.
well, thank you for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard. And that's what life is about and justice should be about, an opportunity to be heard and be given fundamental fairness. I've been the Macomb County Prosecutor now for 3.5 years. I brought more resources. I brought more members to the prosecutor's office than anyone else has in the history of the prosecutor's office. We won 12 awards, the most in the history of the state and maybe even the nation. We're still looking at it. These awards were for the national counties. I also want to provide tools to the units and resources, because that's what a prosecutor does. They make sure that they're soldiers, and that's what I call them. They're in the trenches every day, the prosecutors. The assistants are there, and you provide the tools, resources, training, including the specialty courts for victims to go ahead, seek out their accountability to give them the redemption in a safe, but more importantly, humane way. We want to provide safe harbor for the people here in Macomb County, and we have been. We want to provide also modern units with modern crime techniques to go ahead and prosecute those modern crimes. You know, we never had to deal with body cams, but since we have it, we got to go ahead and make sure that we have the right resources to look at hours and hours of body cam. We invented and came out through the conviction integrity units in our office. We're one of the very few in the state. Hate crimes dealing with gender, religion, as well as ethnicity and race. Why did we get those? Because our county demanded it. Child support, and these are cooperative reimbursement grants. All of these that I talked about are all grant funded, no taxpayer locally dollars. Domestic violence, we use specific training and education. And lastly, the gun crime assessment under my leadership. We won't have guns out there because we want to know, is it a mental illness or is it just another felon coming out that wants to possess a gun and commit another crime? Thank you for the opportunity. I stand ready to do anything I can to help with the NAACP's help in making sure that we make our community safe.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Christina, your 2 minute closing statement.
Thank you, Stephanie. The role of a prosecutor is one of the most important roles in local government. When we make decisions on charging anyone, we are having a profound impact on the lives of many people, on the defendant, on the victim. It changes their ability to provide for their family. It changes their ability to parent and grandparent. It can change lives for generations. That is why we need someone with experience and integrity in the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. I am a professional prosecutor. I'm not running in this race for money or power or TV time. I'm running because I want to make our community safer for everyone. I grew up here in Warren. I still live here with my husband and our 3 kids. And I look around and I'm genuinely worried about whether our kids are going to have the same freedom in this country and the same safety in our communities that I was able to have growing up. I want to make sure that all of us are able to be safe in our communities. So I appreciate your time tonight. I hope that I can earn the vote of the folks that are listening out there. And if you do want to talk more, or if you would like to sign up to volunteer in this grassroots movement to bring integrity back to the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office, you can go to my website. It's hinesformacomb.com. We would love to have you. And again, I appreciate your time. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you for such a thoughtful debate. I appreciate you answering the questions directly and doing it in a very respectful manner in today's climate. I appreciate you modeling that behavior this evening. I would also like to thank our viewing audience. If you're watching on Facebook or if you are a part of Zoom, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. The recording will be made available. So if you know someone who's in Macomb County, they didn't get an opportunity to see tonight's forum, please share it with them. Please educate the community. Give them an opportunity to hear the responses from the candidates. Their information is also on the website for the Macomb County Branch NAACP, so you can get more information there as well. I would like to thank our organizers again, Macomb County Branch NAACP, the Democratic Black Caucus of Macomb County, the Michigan Republican Assembly, and Agape Social Justice LLC. Lastly, as we close out, there are 2 elections coming up, so we can't close without inviting everyone to make sure that you're registered to vote, that you vote and you take someone else with you August 6th and November 5th. Please make sure you show up and vote, and we appreciate you tuning in for this evening. Thank you so much to our candidates again, and have a great night.
Thank you all so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.